Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 393 for the 1st of May 2016. Richard Saunders... Come here. No. Trying to bring you the show with two little kittens on my lap. Okay, you two hop down there. They're very helpful, you see. All they want to do is help me produce the Skeptic Zone. Coming up on this week's show, if I can get to my computer here and put it together. It's all right. Coming up on this week's show, we're going to start off with an update about the chiropractor who was manipulating, cracking, treating, I wouldn't use that word, a 4-day-old baby. As mentioned in previous Skeptic Zones, the video has gone viral and it's causing a lot of controversy around the world. So right at the start of the show, an update to this story. Following that, it's a little review I'm doing about conspiracy theories centering on the Port Arthur massacre 20 years ago now, where 35 people lost their lives. And like any mass shooting these days, it seems to me, the conspiracy theories have come out of their wormholes, out of the woodwork, making a general pest of themselves. Conspiracy theories centering on the Port Arthur massacre coming up a little later on in the show. Then a little bit of information about my upcoming appearance at the Paracon, the Paranormal Convention here in Australia, up in the Blue Mountains, the wonderful town of Katoomba. Then to round off the show, a report about the movie Vaxxed, the Andrew Wakefield effort, talking about conspiracy theories. Now, over the past few weeks, I've been trying to get myself together after suffering some sort of a flu or a cold or something like that. And a couple of days I found myself, well, a bit wiped out, to be honest. Not much else to do except take some aspirin and watch a bit of TV. And I was watching a show produced here in Australia, 20 years ago, called Frontline. And this is produced by the Working Dog, the same people who brought you The Dish and The Castle, and recently Utopia, which is a very funny show. Frontline centered around the fictional office of a current affairs tabloid-type show. And I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed it 20 years ago, and I'm enjoying it very much looking at it again all these years later. It's still relevant, but I thought I'd play you a very short clip from one of the episodes, and it's amazing how relevant it is today.
Next.
I've got a story. A doctor who reckons vaccinating kids can be dangerous.
That's a current affairs equation I love. Children plus danger to children equals...
Brooke, do the story.
Great. Right, next. How's Brooke going with that, that vaccination guy?
It's a bit dodgy. He's a bit of a kook.
Well, he is a doctor.
No, he's a naturopath. He's got no formal medical training.
Well, he's raising a legitimate concern. Are vaccinations dangerous?
But surely this is not...
I'm not a doctor.
Well, neither's he.
Well, we'll get both sides.
There aren't sides, just one quack versus the World Health Organisation.
Well, that's sides.
By giving him equal time, we imply that the debate is evenly matched. We're creating concern over nothing.
Yes,
Sam.
You have a child. Do you love it?
With all my heart.
Tonight on Frontline, could a vaccination kill your child? What show you watch?
Frontline.
And what do we want people to do?
Watch Frontline.
And what story are we going to run tonight on Frontline?
Vaccinations, both sides of this controversial and evenly matched debate.
Gee, thank you, Em.
Better get home to my kids.
Anything else?
So there you go. Even 20 years ago, this issue of false balance in the media was coming up. Now, for those of you in Sydney, the next Skeptics in the Pub is Thursday, the 5th of May, at the Crown Hotel, which is just near Museum Station. Now, that kicks off at 6 p.m, and the talk this month is about, conspiracy theories. There must be a conspiracy going on. All hail the lizard people. Dr. Chris Fleming on the reason and madness in conspiracy theory. Yes, conspiracy theories. I think that's going to be a very popular night. You might want to go onto the web, go to Meetup, look up Australian Skeptics or meetup.com/AUST Skeptics and book your spot. And we'll see you at Skeptics in the Pub here in Sydney. But now with my voice starting to run away with me again, oh boy, this cold or whatever it is really dragging. Never mind. I know, I'll run downstairs, I'll give the cats, the Skeptic Zone kittens, a little bit of chicken neck each. They love that. While they're crunching that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. And now another update in the continuing drama, saga, story, tale of the chiropractor who cracked the back of a 4-day-old baby. We've been following this story for some weeks now. Briefly, there's a video of a chiropractor here in Australia manipulating the back of a baby in a violent, jerking manner. You can hear the baby's back being cracked. Baby's only 4 days old. Baby starts to cry. I need not tell you there is no good evidence to suggest that doing this has any positive effects whatsoever. Apparently the treatment is for colic, and it's been pointed out that a 4-day-old baby is far too young to be diagnosed with colic anyway. But in the last few days, the president of the Chiropractors Association of Australia has said that doctors are overreacting to the video that shows the newborn baby's spine being manipulated. Dr. Anthony Coxon, the president of the Victorian branch of the Chiropractors Association of Australia, said the treatment was forceful but effective. And he said, quote, "While I am uncomfortable with the procedure that was performed, it's still a safe procedure," end quote. He went on to say, quote, "I know it doesn't look good, but the child did get a very good result, an immediate result, from the care when the parents returned a week later. The colic symptoms had improved significantly. It's not the choice of technique that most chiropractors would use for these sort of problems, but it is very effective, and despite the fact it doesn't look good, it's still very safe," end quote. It sort of reminds me of the alternative medical field in general, where they dare not criticize each other. It's interesting. The homeopaths won't criticize the Reiki practitioners won't criticize the acupuncturists, and so on and so on and so on. I guess once one treatment is seen to be bogus, it might be a case of dominoes. They're all falling down. Let's see. And here is a report on the issue from the Channel 7 TV news here in Australia.
A long-running feud between doctors and chiropractors has erupted again, this time over a shocking video that went viral. Thousands of Australians swear by them, but some chiropractors are being condemned for controversial practices, including cracking a distressed newborn baby's back.
A baby back crack that's echoed all around the world.
A shocking new video shows a chiropractor cracking a newborn baby's back.
That chiropractor is Melbourne-based Ian Rossborough, who's treating a 4-day-old baby for reflux and colic.
If that hurt, you'd still be crying.
But if the baby isn't crying, others are. Melbourne spinal surgeon John Cunningham says the clip made his eyes water, while the head paediatrician at Darwin Hospital says it's beyond belief. Today, this from the Royal Australian College of GPs.
It seems to me personally unnecessary and cruel to do that to a newborn baby.
With chiros now advertising treatments for everything from asthma to eczema, the college says this is the final straw.
The role of the chiropractors have really got to be examined, and they've really got to get their act together.
The college, on behalf of every GP in the country, is now reviewing its position on chiropractic care. Options include refusing referrals for children, even adults, and demanding that Medicare rebates for chiros be scrapped, citing little to no scientific evidence to support much of the work chiropractors do.
The research is out there, but we're working very hard to try and improve it and build on that. Low back pain, neck-related headaches, the research is very strong.
Dr. Andrew Rochford, 7 News.
And thank you, 7 News. That's at au.news.yahoo.com. It seems like this story is one that will continue, and we'll bring you updates as they come to hand. Secrets of the Psychics. Australian Skeptics Sydney dinner meeting, 4th of June at the Ryde Eastwood Leagues Club in West Ryde. In preparation for the visit by psychic medium John Edward to Australia, we're thrilled to have a special event for our next dinner meeting in Sydney, a double act, with a demonstration of psychic powers by self-professed psychic Nellie Klein, and an explanation of the psychic skills by Richard Saunders, judge of the psychic TV challenge show The One, and senior investigator for Australian Skeptics Inc. Miss Klein has agreed to do readings of members of our audience, giving you the chance to see her psychic powers in action and see how accurate they are. Richard will follow this with a presentation of psychic tricks of the trade, using his extensive knowledge and confrontation with claimants. Ooh, that sounds interesting. I might even go to this one myself. So that's the Australian Skeptics dinner meeting, the 4th of June, at the Ryde Eastwood Leagues Club in West Ryde, 6:30 for 7:15, it says. Cost is $50 per person, which includes a buffet dinner, and the dinners there are pretty damn good. Plus a lucky door prize, somebody will get their ticket refunded. For more information, visit www.skeptics.com.au. One of the golden threads, one of the rusted through decaying threads that binds a lot of what skeptics have to deal with together are conspiracy theories. Everything from the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963 to the moon landings to the real evil force behind vaccinations, to the government or the Illuminati or aliens or whoever poisoning our atmosphere with chemtrails left behind by commercial jet planes. Conspiracy theories, to those of the right sort of mindset, or maybe we should say the wrong sort of mindset, are very seductive and compelling. They make sense. They're also a way for people to seem to have the advantage over skeptics like us. A classic example is the John F. Kennedy assassination. I had a conversation with a conspiracy theorist about this once, and the conspiracy theorist did something we call gish galloping, is where your opponent will just bring up point after point after point after point, which you cannot possibly refute in the time given, or even research, or even know about. So my opponent, as it were, was bringing up all sorts of things, saying, how do you explain then, Mr. Skeptic, that Lyndon Johnson was overheard only 2 days before discussing the assassination of President Kennedy with the head of this company or that company? Now, what are you going to do? How can you possibly refute that on the spot? You don't even know if it's true, which it probably isn't. And that's another thing that the conspiracy theorists will use. If you, as the skeptic, cannot refute their arguments, no matter what their arguments are, to the nth degree, they will take that as a victory for their argument. You can't debunk this, Mr. Skeptic, therefore I win, is sort of the thinking. Well, let's look at a conspiracy theory that's in the news lately, and one that I've heard about for some time, and when I first heard about it, 6-7 years ago, it really did surprise me, really did shock me. In 1996, at Port Arthur on the island state of Tasmania, a terrible massacre took place. Martin Bryant, a lone gunman, 28 at the time, shot dead 35 people and wounded 23 others. The story made international news, of course, and it's regarded as one of Australia's worst single-person massacres. Now, before I go any further, we're just confining ourselves to this as a terrible massacre. I do, of course, acknowledge that there have been other atrocities and massacres dating back throughout Australia's history. However, for the flow of this conversation, we'll confine ourselves to the single-person Port Arthur massacre. Here is the audio from a news report of the time.
7 Nightly News with Anne Fulwood.
The shooting spree that's shattered dozens of lives, grief and anger tonight as the nation searches for answers to the slaughter. Good evening. All Australians tonight share the horror of the Port Arthur massacre. 35 people are dead, 18 are injured. Police have now named the mass murderer. He is 28-year-old Martin Bryant, a local man believed to be intellectually handicapped. He's in Royal Hobart Hospital tonight, suffering burns to his upper body after running from the guest lodge that he set alight.
Yes, a horrible story, and I certainly remember hearing the news on the day. Hard to believe it was 20 years ago. But getting back to the conspiracy theory, yes, there has been for some time now a theory that Martin Bryant was the patsy, the fall guy, for a conspiracy where markswomen, were also at Port Arthur on the day to make sure that a lot of people were killed. Why? To disarm Australians, because shortly thereafter the Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, began the process of changing the laws in Australia to take serious firearms off the streets. Now, this was very controversial, especially to the people in the rural areas of Australia, and the farmers and so on, who have a legitimate use for guns, of course. And there were protests and all sorts of things going on. But the point is, these laws were passed. Thousands and thousands of firearms were taken off the streets. They had a gun buyback and destroyed. Now, we still have gun crime in Australia. Of course, criminals have guns, but it is rare, exceedingly rare, when you think of this situation in the United States. We don't have anything in our Constitution that says we have the right to bear arms. And I don't think you'll find too many people in Australia who would want to have this right to bear arms, to walk around with handguns, to have guns in their home. We just don't have them, and I don't think we miss them. Security guards guarding banks and money in transit have firearms. Police have firearms, but I can't think of many other people who would. So to even see a gun is pretty rare. The closest I've come to firing a gun was on a farm, and that was an air rifle. And I think that puts me ahead of most Australians who would have never even have touched a gun of any description. But getting back to the massacre itself, the eyewitnesses are plentiful, although, of course, traumatized. There was a special on the TV not so long ago interviewing some of the eyewitnesses for the first time, some of them for the first time in 20 years, coming forward to put their story. There is grainy video, handheld video made at the time of Martin Bryant walking around the Port Arthur area. There is no evidence of any other people involved, let alone some sort of special forces or government agents or phantoms from the Illuminati or whatever they'll have you believe. For a good overview of the conspiracy theories in the Port Arthur massacre, I can recommend the Skeptoid episode 253, The Port Arthur Massacre. And in the news lately, a graphic film apparently depicting the horror of the Port Arthur massacre will go ahead by an Australian producer, Paul Modder, who, it seems, is casting doubt on the official explanation and story of the massacre itself. Now, this producer was a guest on the current affairs show The Project recently to discuss his movie, and he came up against presenter Waleed Aly. Now, Waleed Aly is getting a reputation in Australia as being a fine journalist, and I think he's even up for a TV award this year for the best personality on Australian TV or something like that. And The Project, of course, is the TV show in which our very own Dr. Rachel Dunlop, appears on from time to time, and I've even appeared on the show myself, talking about skeptical matters. Well, let's listen in to hear how Waleed Aly dealt with this producer when it came to conspiracy theories.
I note that you wrote on Facebook that Martin Bryant, quote, allegedly committed the crime. What is that meant to mean? I mean, he's convicted. There's no allegedly about it.
Well, I guess if you want to look at it, I'll call them discrepancies because I don't want to label them necessarily with calling them conspiracy theories. But there are things like because there was no open trial, there were never any fingerprints taken from the scene that proves that Martin was there. There were never any ballistic evidence matching the firearms to the crime scene or Bryant to the firearms.
There's not going to be ballistics evidence because there was a confession. Like, that's not going to be presented in front of court because there was a confession.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Once somebody pleads guilty, you don't have to provide evidence and do
so
all
there's
that
nothing
stuff.
to be made
then
of
I
the
guess
fact that
people have to understand
that this evidence hasn't been presented publicly. Of course it hasn't been presented publicly. That's the way the system works. If there was a defensible case, in this case, it would have run a trial. That's what would have happened. And those discrepancies, if they even exist, would be discussed and judges would rule on them. But the fact that someone can just say, in a case where there was a conviction and really no debate about who did this, oh, look, there was a discrepancy over here. That's the stuff of conspiracy theory. That's how you build a conspiracy theory, is you try to inject doubt where there just isn't any.
A lot of people out there don't agree with you who just think, look, there's not enough evidence. There are people out there...
They're in no position to say that, Paul. They're in
just saying there's not enough evidence to say that he was...
Paul, they can't say that. Because it didn't go to trial, we didn't see the evidence because there was a confession. So, this is absolutely unremarkable as a legal proceeding from what I can tell. And it sounds, when you say, well, there's all this stuff out there that might make it remarkable, that's what leads me to believe there's something really weird going on here, and I can completely understand why survivors and their families would say no.
I'll add a link to that video in the show notes this week, or if you just Google the Project Port Arthur, you'll find that clip. Conspiracy theories seem to pop up regularly. As soon as there's a large event anywhere in the world, Sandy Hook, for example, it seems sometimes within minutes, the conspiracy theories start. I think it's a sport. Some people just love to come up with something instantly to gain notoriety, and conspiracy theories feed on each other. Again, we get back to the same root thing of them, they, call them what you will, the Illuminati, the one world government is behind it all. Why? Because they want to control us. And on it goes, spiralling into a maze, as my friend Dr. Phil Plait, the bad astronomer, once told me, into a maze of unending rooms for which there is no escape. Humans are storytelling, pattern-seeking animals, which means from time to time we will see patterns where no patterns exist. And if the story associated with a pattern we think we perceive is enticing, interesting, a bit daring, and we feel like we might even be uncovering the truth or getting behind the mystery, it's very enticing, very seductive. And that's why skepticism is so important, critical thinking. For when we realize that we are storytelling, pattern-seeking animals with a fallible brain and fallible memory and reasoning skills, then we can stop and question our own assumptions. Like the John F. Kennedy assassination, the Port Arthur conspiracy theories, they won't go away. But it doesn't mean we have to give up our reasoning skills and fall into the endless maze of believing them. Paracon, Australia's only paranormal conference. This year it's going to be at the Carrington Hotel, Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, on May 28th and 29th. So if you're into the paranormal, the spooky, the mysterious, the supernatural, ghost hunters, UFOs everywhere, that sort of stuff, this is the conference for you. Lots of local and international guests coming in to talk, including yours truly. And you can catch my talk, A Skeptic's Guide to Passing the $1 Million Challenge, and that'll be on the Saturday night from 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. For more information and to buy your tickets, visit paraconaustralia.com. And don't forget, if you just want to come along and see my talk, you can just buy a ticket for my talk, and that's at the bargain price of $25. Or you can buy a 1-day or 2-day pass and see the whole kit and caboodle. So if you're interested about more details about various skeptical challenges around the world for large amounts of money, or you want to apply. Oh yes, if you have a paranormal or supernatural ability you can prove, then come and see me at Paracon. ParaconAustralia.com. Brisbane Times at www.brisbanetimes.com.au by Sarah Gill. Anti-immunisation movie Vaxxed is a platform for its maker, not its message. Amid World Immunisation Week, a film by a frontman for the anti-vaccination movement is being rolled out in US cinemas. Published on April 27th. A new film by Andrew Wakefield, disgraced former doctor and poster boy for the anti-vaccination movement, is being rolled out in cinemas across the United States. What more, one wonders, could Wakefield possibly have to offer on this topic, given his deplorable conduct in the late 1990s, when he essentially fabricated a link between autism and the combined measles, mumps and rubella vaccine that caused a worldwide vaccination scare? What followed over the next 2 decades, including mind-blowing revelations of dishonesty, fraud, avarice and chicanery, culminated in Wakefield's medical deregistration in 2010. Apparently, undeterred by this litany of prior misdemeanours, Wakefield's film Vaxxed, From Cover-Up to Catastrophe, simply sidesteps his past and reprises the causal link between MMR vaccine and autism, this time accusing the US Centre for Disease Control of scientific fraud by manipulating data to conceal the correlation between the triple shot and autism. Pot, kettle, black? After being dumped by the prestigious Tribeca Film Festival in March, following condemnation from the international science community, Vaxxed premiered in New York on April 1st, the only day of the year, so they say, when people critically evaluate information rather than taking it on faith. Let's hope so. As global milestones for measles elimination start to slip amid recent outbreaks in Australia, New Zealand, Britain and the United States, to say that this latest offering is seriously unhelpful is an understatement. The original 1998 Lancet paper, now retracted, may have been comprehensively demolished by subsequent research and crippled by revelations of the author's pecuniary interests and falsification of data, but that doesn't mean the narrative still doesn't resonate with some sectors of the community. Indeed, 2 weeks after pulling the film from the festival program, Tribeca co-founder Robert De Niro made a spectacular U-turn on the Today TV show, defending the filmmakers and urging people to see the film. As it happens, being ditched from the festival lineup in New York and Houston, where people took to the streets in protest, doesn't appear to have damaged the interest in the film or damaged its commercial prospects. New York screenings, accompanied by talks with Wakefield, were sold out, and the film's Facebook page even hints at a level of enthusiasm for an Australian release. Wakefield and Vaxxed producer Del Bigtree have described the decision not to screen the film as, quote, yet another example of the power of corporate interests censoring free speech, art and truth. Tribeca's action will not succeed in denying the world access to the truth behind the film Vaxxed, end quote. And their statement dovetails selectively with the film's central narrative. But what the filmmakers and De Niro are asserting, that different points of view deserve to be aired, not censored, blithely overlooks that this is not just about the message, but the messenger. As one film critic commented, quote, Wakefield doesn't just have a dog in this fight, he is the dog, end quote. There is something profoundly ironic about Wakefield pointing to the commercial interests of the pharmaceutical industry or accusing the CDC of data manipulation when you consider his own undisclosed financial interests behind the 1998 Lancet study and his role in what has been called out to be one of the most flagrant frauds in medical history. It's not a stretch to say that the title of his new film could well describe the shenanigans of Wakefield himself in the late 90s, the cover-up being the secret contract with lawyers who paid him to construct a case against MMR, and the catastrophe, of course, the worldwide slump in vaccination. Don't be fooled. Wakefield's story is not a tale of a man wronged by powerful corporations or the medical establishment, which, in fact, closed ranks to protect him. It's a story of a physician who set out to cast doubt on vaccine safety before he even gathered the evidence, and he did so not for the public good, but for private gain. If this sounds personal, that's because it is. Scores of parents in the early 2000s, myself included, harboured a deep sense of unease about the 18-month MMR, and solely because of a small and inclusive, but nonetheless troubling, study by a man uniquely positioned to exploit our greatest fears. Wakefield's hunger for media attention, his ferocious personal ambition and cunning business dealings included a patent filed in 1997 for a vaccine to replace the triple shot and generate millions of pounds in general revenue were a toxic mix. And not so much, it seems, has changed. If you scratch the surface of Vaxxed, it's hardly surprising to discover the whole thing starts to disintegrate. The reanalysis of the CDC dataset, alleging a correlation between MMR vaccine and autism in African American males, published in 2014, has now been retracted, with the journal editor citing questionable methods of, quote, undeclared competing interests on the part of the author, end quote. Lamentably, that hasn't stopped it going viral online or prompting mass rallies like the one which took place at the CDC in Atlanta last weekend, a symptom, perhaps, of our enduring fascination for conspiracy theories. A paediatrician and bioethicist at Johns Hopkins Berman Institute of Bioethics observed in 2014 that those behind the study, quote, manipulated the data and manipulated the media in a very savvy and sophisticated way, end quote, and continue to do so, needless to say. None of this is to suggest, of course, that there's never a conflict of interest between private enterprise and public good, or that scrutiny of pharmaceutical companies, responsible, God knows, for their share of public health catastrophes, is unwarranted. But if we really object to being lied to, if we'd prefer not to sacrifice the greater good of the community for the benefit of the privileged few, then why would we not apply the same level of scrutiny to anyone with a profit motive? Who knows? If Wakefield and his associates are true to form, Vaxxed is just another desperate attempt to hoodwink the public for no greater purpose than making money. And Sarah Gill is an Age columnist who has worked as a writer and policy analyst. She is undertaking postgraduate legal studies at the University of Western Australia. And this story comes to us from the Brisbane Times at brisbanetimes.com.au, and the accompanying cartoon, illustrated by John Spooner, depicts a skeleton like the Grim Reaper in a director's chair, and the skeleton is saying lies, camera, action, and on the back of the chair it says Director, Anti-Vaccination Unit.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Boy, do those kittens love their bit of chicken neck. Crunch, crunch, crunch. And what's really sweet is when they get tired, they look for a lap. And up they pop. Ah, yeah. Anyway, coming up on next week's show, we'll have some reports from skeptics in the pub. Probably some more about conspiracy theories. But sometimes I don't even know what's coming up on next week's show. It's a surprise to me. That's why I'd like to listen. Thank you to all those people who do contribute to the Skeptic Zone via PayPal at skepticzone.tv, micropayments. Some people chip in $1 a week, some people chip in $5 and even more. It's all very much appreciated, and it does mean the show keeps going, even if my voice doesn't. All right, well, it's time for me to have a bit of a lie down, rest my voice for next week's show. But for now, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation. What followed over the next decade, including mind-blowing revelations of dishonest... Oh, those cats. All right, what is it? Don't tell me. Yeah, look a little innocent.